Is the kind of a special meeting of the Capital Preservation Committee. We normally meet annually in October, and we have a couple of items to consider this morning. First, let's do our introductions. My name is Patrick Zollner, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Kansas Historical Society and was appointed chair by the governor. I guess I'll start to my left. Senator Bowers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Senator Elaine Bowers, Senate District 36, Concordia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jesse Bourgeon, State Representative for the 52nd House District here in Topeka.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Curtis Young. I am the Director of the Kansas Creative Arts Industries Commission.
Good morning. BJ Harden, Chief of Staff for Kansas House Speaker Dan Hawkins.
Good morning. Frank Burnham, Deputy Secretary of Operations for the Kansas Department of Administration.
And good morning, Representative Aldini Nguyen from Kansas City.
Good morning, Senator Chase Blasey from West Wichita, representing parts of West Sedgwick County and West Wichita.
Corey Sheedy, Chief of Staff for the Kansas Senate Democratic Leader, Dinah Sykes.
And I believe we have two members online. And
yeah, Joe Brentano, Kansas City, Kansas, formerly KSHS.
And is Senator Hensley on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I'm on. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Our first order of business is a review of Senate Bill 431, the Father Emil Capon Memorial, and we do not have a representative of the reviser to give us the overview. Senator Blasey, would you like to do that?
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. This was a piece of legislation brought to the Kansas Senate by Senator Bowers, and who served on this committee with myself, and Senator Rick Wilborn, Vice President of the Senate, who represents Pilsen, Kansas, in Marion County, which is where Emil Capon grew up. He served in both World War II and Korea as a chaplain, and his story was very courageous and shared through two very emotional hearings in the Kansas Legislature earlier this session. He has been awarded the Medal of Honor by President Barack Obama in 2013, but ultimately he died in 1951, serving his fellow soldiers as a prisoner of war in the Korean War. And his story was remarkable. I'll just share one piece of it. He was there to feed these soldiers, share his rations. He was able to help provide clothing, help keep them their hopes and spirits up more than anything, which was a very powerful story. And his testament was shared by many of the survivors of that prisoner of war camp. And I believe all have now passed except for maybe two. I could be wrong on that number, but their story is just very remarkable, and it's been shared and is well known by many Kansans, and as we've heard in testimony. And so we felt like it was important to just have a permanent memorial here in the Capitol to kind of recognize his exemplary service to both his soldiers, our nation, and really just as a shining example of what Kansas is about, which is about service and giving to others and putting himself before others, or putting others before himself. So that's what this memorial does. And there is a committee going to be kind of a informal group that's going to kind of be put together to help decide what kind of memorial they're looking at, hiring an artist, everything that's already been done on other murals and art pieces that are around the Capitol grounds. And so that group will be putting kind of together their plan and how they're going to fundraise, and hopefully they're going to meet here in the next several months.
Thank you. And I would note that, unlike some of our recent projects where we had an application and then at the very end got legislation, it's done and the bill's signed by the governor. So are there any questions from the committee? Senator Blasey, would we like to form a subcommittee of the Capital Preservation Committee?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we create a three-member committee of the subcommittee, and I'm very willing to chair it.
Thank you. Do we have any volunteers who wishes to serve on this? Representative Bourgeon?
Nominate Frank.
I think Frank always has to.
Yes, I'd be happy to serve.
And Mr. Chair, if you would like to have me, I'm happy to help
Okay,
Senator
thanks.
Blasey as well.
Great. So we have a subcommittee. So you said they were to meet. So right now, there's no conception of how this memorial would look or where it would be?
In preliminary conversations with a lot of the interested parties, they're looking at putting together a bronze statue, very similar to what you see in our nation's capital in the State House, inside the State House.
Inside the State House.
I think they're originally thinking the second floor by the veteran windows.
Okay, well, hopefully then the subcommittee can meet and we can have some more to work on in our October meeting. Thank you. All right. Our next order of business is a report on the subcommittee on signage overview. Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was our subcommittee. We chose at our meeting to bring up the fact that some of the signs are not, or some of our statues on the second floor are not labeled, and we thought that would be a nice touch for visitors coming in. And I believe we have a report in our file talking about the artist, Peter Felton Jr. from Hayes, and we do have a representative from Hayes, our representative in the audience, Barb Wassinger, and I wonder if we might bring her up to the podium to talk with us a little bit about the artwork and then what the city of Hayes, community of Hayes is willing to do for us.
Yes, please. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a really exciting project because this is Hayes' very own Pete Felton, and we've watched him drive around town and going down to his studio in, I can't remember the name of the car, the same car that's in Back to the Future. So you always know when Pete's around because you either see his tall figure walking around or you see his car. So you know where he doesn't hide very well. The City of Hayes Tourism Bureau came to me and asked if they would be able to put a sign up on those limestone figures because that's really the medium he works in. He's got statues all over. Anytime you see a limestone statue, you can pretty much guess it's Pete Felton's. But the City of Hayes came to me and asked if they could do something that's just like the other signs on the Capitol. May I use props? I don't know. So it's the same size. They're having the exact same company who made all the other plaques do the plaques. The City of Hayes will take on the entire cost of the plaques and whatever it needs to be implemented. And I would truly appreciate if the committee would agree that this is, it was just, I believe, Pete's 93rd birthday this past year. So we did a resolution. We weren't able to get the signs up, but he doesn't go anywhere. So we thought maybe his niece would come and when we get to put them on. But I would appreciate your support in this. Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, thank you, Representative Wassinger. Frank and I did look at these statues, trying to decide where the best placement would be for the plaques. We did note that we'd like them to be similar. So the samples that you had brought to us was very helpful, and we decided we should not place them on the statue, but next to it, and the location and the approximate size is listed in the report. So we think we have a nice addition where it will blend with everything else we have. So I believe we have scoped this out pretty well, and Frank being on hand when we install them I'm sure do you have anything else you'd like to add to that, Frank? Because I think we have our idea where we think they'll look the best.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I would agree that the look and everything is consistent. The concern was how it was going to be mechanically attached or adhesively attached to the historic finishes, and we're confident that this vendor has done this in the past and will come up with a plan that we can approve for installation. So I would support it as facilities administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your support. We we're really excited. It's important. All you people that think driving out to Hayes is way too far to go, you can come out and meet Pete because he's really a wonderful, interesting person to look at, and to see his body of work is amazing. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and I do agree, labeling these so we can know who the artist was in rural Kansas too is very special to us, some of us legislators as well. So I would make a motion that we accept the subcommittee's report on the signage and move forward with the project.
Thank you. Senator Bowers has moved and Representative Bourgeon has seconded. Let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Passes. So now our last item on the agenda, the one that we have a group in the audience representing, is the approval of the Suffragist Memorial Mural. And I would call on Sil, you get up first. Who is going to present to us?
Zollner and members of the committee. I'm Seal King. I'm the co-chair with Marlene Merrill for this committee, and we've been working on this for 2-3 years now. When we were before you last October, we just finished interviewing and reviewing the proposals from the 4 finalists. Phyllis Pease's mural, with a striking V formation for the suffragist, was by far the most preferred among our committee. However, there were some changes that needed to be made. Phyllis had taken us up on a notion of informing and inspiring future women and included more current progressive women, which, because of doing a historical memorial, needed to be replaced with suffragists before 1920. You'd ask about our fundraising. We currently have raised about $35,000. We have recently identified a list of likely donors, both private and business, and a couple of grant opportunities that we will be contacting soon. We are confident that Phyllis's impressive painting will bring donations. We ask Phyllis to be here today to describe her painting and to answer your questions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Phyllis.
Thank you, Lucille.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking your time. And this is an amazing, as a Kansan, as I said to this committee, as a Kansan, as a native Kansan, and an artist, this is a great opportunity. And I'm so proud of our state. And this is definitely something that I believe needs to be shouted from the rooftops. So I believe in your suggestions. I took all of them and included every suffragist that was suggested except one. And it was just really a matter of space, and also I wanted to highlight the women that really had a more of a pivotal role locally and nationally. So in your key from left to right, you can see I started with Anna Anthony, and that there was a lot of meetings at that house. And an interesting story about that is her husband was not too happy about her having suffragist meetings because he was a physician in the community and he didn't really feel comfortable with the attention sometimes, but the meeting still happened. The images then go, which is amazing to me, several women of color, lawyers, Ludi Little, a lawyer at that time, helping women navigate divorce and property rights. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of these women did come from other places and moved here, but they moved here because they wanted to make a difference in our country. And there are some natives. Some of the images, like this is actually an image from Kansas. So I'm pulling from the historical images from our state. And then you'll go on to Anna Waite from Lincoln, then Lila D. Monroe from, let's see, Waukene, Annie Diggs, and she's responsible for our wonderful library here in the Capitol, and also represented suffragists internationally. Laura M. Johns, she was the president, kind of very pivotal in the KESA. And in the middle, of course, is Clarina Nichols, which I felt was truly the champion that no one, the hero that probably a lot of people don't know about, and was very pivotal in many regards, not just with the women's movement, but the Underground Railroad, and that's why she's holding the lantern, because that was their signal that it was safe. Was the lanterns in the dark. And next to her, she helped many escaped slaves, but there's one record of her instance of her hiding a woman in her cistern until she was able to get her free. And then next to her is Lizzie Sheldon, who wrote the resolution, which is displayed at the top banner. And you wanted a date, and it has her name and the date on the end. Next to her, well, Carolyn Hughes Clark is with her son. It's the representation of her son as a young man. Langston Hughes. And the teacher is Mamie Dillard, and she saw his talents as a young person in school and taught at the Pinckney School. So they're represented there. Next to her is Jane L. Brooks, which is from Wichita. And she founded the first state chapter of the National League of Women Voters, and was very active in the community of Wichita. And then Lucy B. Johnston, at the end, led the campaign and was president when the resolution passed in 1912. And she was also very involved in the traveling books, the traveling libraries, which as a child, the Carnegie libraries were a wonderful thing in my childhood. And out in rural Kansas, I grew up in Kingman County, and it was just one of those bright places in my life. I loved the library. And then the Minnie Grinstead is down at her desk, Kansas House of Representatives, doing her work. And she was the first woman elected to the Kansas House of Representatives. So the other things that are, to me, the symbolism of our first Capitol burning, this is Lawrence, the border wars, which especially Clarina Nichols, her children had to fight in those border wars, and they were, especially during elections, they were trying to keep the Missourians from coming over and voting in the Kansas elections at that time. But so that represents this side, and then our beautiful Capitol on the right with wheat field. The flowers, the sunflower became, of course, the suffragist symbol too. And the color of the prairie flowers, like in a lot of Curry's works, there are other little flora and fauna and native Kansas things that are represented in those murals, and that's the prairie flowers are also the color of the suffragists. The purple is the asters that grow on the prairie, the sunflowers, and then the white is Queen Anne's lace, and so we have the colors, the suffragist colors, behind the women. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Phyllis. Any questions from the committee? Frank?
I think there was a question last time about the scale and the text and knowing what the content of the text is in each one of these messages. Do you have that information somewhere?
In each one of the messages.
Signs, just the different things and
Oh, and on the signs, and the women are holding in the painting?
just in general, anything that's on there that's going to be a permanent thing. And there was a
think-
question of a committee member about.
I think the one that was kind of in question was on the modern ones on the right, and that one was, those were taken off, like the modern women on the right, or people, the marchers. The signs that I have are, like, I look at historic photos from Kansas and, you know, in these marches and represent, you know, I put the signs that, you know, were held during that time, like the, you know, votes for women, give us the votes now. I mean, those are signs that were held in the marches in our state. And then on the right, it's more the ballot boxes, it just says votes. Lizzie Sheldon is holding her resolution, so those words would be her, you know, what she wrote. She was the editor of the Kansas Women's Journal, and she also wrote the stories. She collected stories from women all over the state, and her, was it her granddaughter? Granddaughter eventually made it into a book. So any text like that would be from those, and this is actually what was on the car in that photo. So the things I'm taking, I'm not, you know, I'm making up, I'm looking at actual Kansas history and, you know, representing it here. Down there, actually at her feet, I had the blueprints. I wanted the blueprints of the library because, and she was also very, you know, adamant about that. So I think that, and then the other suggestion was they wanted to note that Lizzie Sheldon was the one that wrote that resolution, the banner across the top, and I do include her name right here, and the date it was written. Yes, the rights of the citizens of the state of Kansas to vote and to hold offices should not be denied or abridged on account of sex.
Frank, I know we had some questions last time about the mounting, and I see we have a more detailed description. Any concerns there?
I guess I did have a question. Will there be, I guess, a plaque or something next to the mural that will
Yes.
silhouette or identify who these individuals are? And
Yes, and I think this key right here, it could be as simple as this, and then the little key that you have, it'll be more fancy than this, because what we can do is actually have scan the, you know, the actual painting, but highlight these women, and that can be the key to, you know, it can be as simple as that. And in the, I have a sign company, Thomas Outdoor Sign, that has done stuff for me like they did it at the zoo, and can, on the wall that's to the right, the 4-foot wall, there can be actually quite a large plaque or installed, and I would say it's very similar to some of the other ones that you have in the Capitol that are just on standoffs, that it can be 3 feet by 4 feet. I think that's the dimensions I have. And it would have the key that's right there that, you know, when students come, they can look, oh, who's this woman? Oh, I see her. And she's number 1. Her name was Anna O. Anthony. And actually, there's room to have even more of a description on the history of each one of these women to the right of the painting.
So as a follow-up, is there an option to put something below the mural that would be more of a sign that extends out so that we're not taking up another wall? My concern is, as we start taking up more and more space, it limits our options in the future? And is there
It could.
a way to identify those individuals maybe directly underneath?
It could. I don't think that, and, you know, I guess it kind of depends on the aesthetic you're looking for. Because to me, the other paintings and murals that are up, you know, they have something off. You know, there's some, it's not, the difference is these are real people and those are images of maybe the world. And I can see your point, but I guess it just depends on the aesthetic of it. We could have a long, maybe, you know, something similar to what the person before me went and underneath it, or I could almost, you know, I could see it being kind of incorporated at the bottom. And
Other reason for asking is just so that anybody with a disability that may be in a wheelchair or something would be able to fully view and read and understand the text. Whereas if it's going to be on the wall and it's
something
large.
that we could have time to look at while I'm working on the painting, because of the painting, and because I'm quite honestly getting really nervous about the timeline, which is fine now. I mean, it's okay, but it's you know, it is weighing heavy on my mind. But those other things can be done and those decisions can be made, and we can look at options in this 10-month time if we're looking at next year, 2025. And as far as the walls, as where they're installed, they're both the same. It's, you know, kind of wall. So I think we could probably figure that out. I think if you did it on the right, even though you're taking up another space, the text could be large enough that you could read it from a wheelchair. That's the print on the one that he did at the zoo. It's probably at about the same height. I think it starts at about, you know, like my chest level. And so if you're down, but it's large enough that you can read. Also, the beauty of that is that it can be changed. Like, for some reason, if you did it along the bottom, I mean, not that this is history and change, but there would be opportunity to, like, because the nature of how those signs are made, they can be easily changed, and it's not expensive to change. And your other question to installation, and you had the French cleats that would be installed, because this is a large stretcher, and I have very talented carpenters that make things for me, and they are the ones that will come and install it. There's like 30 years of experience and everything. It's just basic screws and mollies into the wall, but what's nice about those is it holds it tight and secure and keeps, you know, the whole structure flat. And it's a fairly controlled environment in here, but it will keep it from warping and all anything moving with that kind of installation.
Thank you. I have, for one, I will suggest if we vote to approve that you work with the subcommittee on the actual signage or plaque, whatever description.
Absolutely.
We can figure that out.
And we can get, like, I can get examples printed out and emailed or sent to you all to look at and approve before we do anything on that.
I did have a question. We see the white at the bottom and the top, the border. Will that actually make it onto the final
No.
mural like this? I was about to
No.
say that.
No, it will be, again, my first one. The other thing we had discussed is frame or no frame, which we haven't got to yet, but if there is no frame, it wraps around. So the depth of the painting is about 2 inches, but the canvas wraps all the way around. And so when that happens and the edges are exposed, I just continue the color around the edge, so.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions from the committee? Representative Bourgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. being one of the newer members on the committee, I'm not seeing in the materials, I think I know where this is at, but where exactly in the Capitol is this being placed?
It's across from the cage elevator.
Second, okay.
Yeah,
First floor, okay, thank you. I'll be sure.
That was
Closer
the
attention
easiest
when
way
I'm
when
down
people are
there. Thank
asking me,
you.
and everybody knows where the cage elevator is.
Yes, I remember, thank you for that clarification. We had a couple of different options early on, but that was the final one.
It's a real small detail, but is the State House image supposed to be today's time or then's time? Because it does have Ad Astra on top of the dome.
Today's time. If you would prefer it not, but I just love the North Star. I mean, I think that's it's such a stunning piece, and he has a Manhattan connection too, so.
Well, thank you. I know I'm getting tired watching you put that up, so.
We're hardy West.
I know. Do we have a motion to approve the design? You're always on it.
Yeah. I would make a motion that we approve as presented today.
We have a second from Senator Bowers. Representative, or Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a quick question. Does that include the frame? Are we discussing the inclusion of the frame or not? Is that part of the proposal right now?
Yes, Phyllis, could you clarify? We won't see a frame. It's a wraparound, correct?
That was one of the things that was discussed, and the concern was that the frame would take away, but that is in the budget projections, that is an additional fee. And the reason, it's not a very great rendition because it'd be much more beautiful. This is the drawing that I had, and the inspiration is because of the laurels that the women carried between each other. If you see some of the parades and protests, they have these strings of laurels from shoulder to shoulder as they're marching down the street. And so this was my drawing, and the suggestion was, I believe black walnut to use. And someone was worried about the proportion, but actually the frame would probably be only this big, a little bit bigger than that border that's around the Brown versus Board of Education. But it has across the top the significant dates, the 1867, and then the 1912 in the center, and then the 1920 on the right, the sunflowers. And I thought it was just kind of a tribute to the beauty of the marches, and a tribute to how long it took. Because it could have been written into our Constitution at the very beginning, and they decided, not to do that. And it took all those years, and it just shows the spans of time, which it was just an idea that I had, and it kind of would set it apart from, it's still a mural and everything, but it just is something historic to add around that painting. And there's room at the 9 by 19 size, because the space is 11 by 21, I believe, that this is something also that can be discussed while I'm getting started, because I want to go ahead and get my guys started on that stretcher, like now, and get it. So that's something that you all can think about. Or not.
Well, that does raise a question, because and thank you for pointing that out, Corey, because this would be somewhat precedent setting, because none of our other murals have frames. And so this would be different and would look different. And would there be since you do want to get started, I guess that's the other question for the committee, for Lucille, Marlene. You said you had 35,000 raised, which is a portion. Are we comfortable getting started? Okay.
Yes, because we're confident in our success with what we've planned.
I guess the real question is Phyllis comfortable, right?
Well, that is the real question.
Our committee has decided that we would block the frame.
Okay. Frank, and then
So a follow-up question with this having a frame and actually standing off the wall, is this intended to keep people a certain distance away where we would need ropes and stanchions?
It
Because
wouldn't be the depth wouldn't be any deeper than the painting. It's just would be a frame like, I mean, not necessarily, I mean, some of it might be a little bit, but it would be a frame like, a framed painting. So it would just look, and actually, that's one of the things that I didn't notice about Brown versus Board of Education before I came back to the Capitol and looked closely. There is that trim piece that's around that it does frame it, so it would have that similar feel. It would be more decorative, but it really is just a tribute to the movement and the dates, and it just is another way to kind of show the history of that. But it's really just an additional piece. It's kind of like a cherry on the top for me, because I was designing it and doing all this and just looking at all this research, and just that thing just kept coming back to me, that image of the women with the laurels between them. And plus the fact that the sunflower ends up being the symbol, which was really wonderful, So
in looking at this image, I thought it was actually painted on the canvas.
Oh, okay.
The border, because
No.
you have the color of the wall and the contrast, which we cannot change. So I guess that might want to factor in how you're terminating your edges.
it would just be framed like you would frame any painting. So it would have an edge that the painting would sit in, and then the whole structure would be installed. And it's just another piece that would protect the edges of the painting over time. And it wouldn't require any more care than, any other piece of art that's in the Capitol, dusting.
Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Phyllis. Really nice work. Have you considered the thought of painting the frame on the painting so it looks like a frame? I've always been one to continue what the other murals look like in the building.
Right.
Not that I don't want it to set out with that. I do like your dates on there. I do like the idea of a frame. But what if it was painted? And we were just talking over here, maybe this is something we can scope out with the subcommittee too in more detail, but is that a thought that you could paint?
That is an option, but that would be something that I would want to, I want to get the size down so we can, if we're making these decisions but yeah, yes, I could do that. I mean, that is option because I paint realism. I mean, I could, make it look like a three-dimensional thing if you were interested in having those dates on there too, or that design. So, and if it's a decision whether you want it to look more like the Currys and everything that are there, it's still going to look different because it's not on the wall, and it will come out from the wall. It's not going to come out much farther than the trim or anything. Yeah, that is definitely an option, and which is I'm perfectly willing to do.
Representative Bourgeon, did you, no questions anymore? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so I don't know if we need to change our motion or not to what we're actually voting on. Do we have any more discussion on the frame at this time?
I mean, the frame is a purely subjective thing. I personally like it. I'm sympathetic to not all other murals we have in the Capitol have a frame, but I mean, the piece that is currently in the governor's conference room from the Hayes artist does have a pretty amazing frame on it. So I think we have discussed before moving that out of that room at some point and putting it out somewhere in the Capitol. And so that will have a frame. So I don't know, how it goes into the determination here, but I prefer the frame. I'm not too fond of painting it on there. So if we don't do the actual frame, I wouldn't prefer to have it painted on. But maybe this is a determination for the subcommittee to make at some point, but
and actually, I kind of feel like that as far as looking at the piece. I kind of feel like that it would be more, more monumental. That's a good word, with the frame on it. And if not, painting it on, for lack of a better word, might make it feel a little kitschy. So.
Okay. Frank, would you like to modify your motion, or do we want to vote on it as is with the frame?
I guess my substitute motion, or also revised motion, would be to approve the design as presented today, I guess either with a physical frame or with no frame.
So the question with the frame or without, because then we have it, if we paint on it, changes your scale, correct, and your width, and. Okay.
And I'm happy to second, because we will continue to meet with the subcommittee on this topic, I imagine.
I just want to make sure we don't do anything that's going to prohibit you guys from moving forward, since we're meeting maybe one more time this year.
So I second Frank's proposal.
Okay, we have a motion. It's approving the design without commenting on the frame at this time, correct? Is that a good way to you said with or without?
Approving the design as presented today with the option of a physical frame or no frame, no painted frame.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. All in favor of this motion? Say aye. Aye. Are there any people opposed? Anyone online? Did I miss someone? Comment, votes. Okay. Okay. Well, it's been approved. Thank you so much. And the subcommittee continues to wish to work with you on these items that we mentioned, the plaque.
I want to thank each and every one of you for your support as we've kind of gone through this process. It's been an exciting adventure, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Representative Nguyen.
And thank you. Are we at adjournment?
This was the last item on the agenda. Is there any new business or anyone would like to?
Well, I just wanted to ask a couple questions. It was my understanding, well, I didn't have an understanding, that the subcommittee for the First Kansas Colored could only meet upon the approval of the committee. So apparently that was a mistake. But that, nevertheless, I need to refresh my memory who's on the subcommittee, please. And then.
Heather, do you have that list? I'll have to dig through some files. You're the chair. Right?
That's what I'm asking. And which staffer will we have? Senator Blasey. Okay, great. I'm sure you are also.
We will find that and get that to you.
We don't want to take 10 years for that.
No, but we will, it's next month, we'll request our meeting dates for the fall for the subcommittees and the main meeting, correct? So, okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heather O'Hara with Legislative Research. I do have in my notes the subcommittee is chaired by Representative Nguyen. Also Senator Blasey, Frank, of course, the chairman, and Joe. Those were the folks that volunteered.
Joe? Yep. Oh, that Joe. Okay, great. All right, so we should proceed.
Okay, do you have an update that you would like to give on the committee, or because you're waiting to meet? Okay. All right, great. Are there any other new business before we adjourn? Frank, that's right. You had a question.
Apologize. I had one more question for the artist. The lighting, as you see it today, is that sufficient, or have you given thought to what might need to be done? I'll need that information at some point.
Looking at it, it's similar to what's everywhere else. Are those movable at all? Do they rotate? A little bit, okay. That's the only thing I could say, is when you look at it, there's kind of a hot spot up high, so I don't know that I'd want to turn it so it's, make it a hot spot on the painting, but I think it's sufficient.
I know we did some modifications on the Brown v. board, so you may want to look at that today.
I might take a look at that before I go to see, and it seems to, of course, light the higher portion of the wall more than washing down, so it may be a little bit of modification, but I'll take a look at that, because I didn't notice that was different, so I'll take a look.
Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say it's a beautiful work. Thank you to the artists for putting that together. I'm very excited to see it once it's up on the wall, in the hall. Thank you.
All right, well, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.